I am Margaret Hale, 44 years old, and I spent 14 years believing my husband was the one person who understood why the few things my late mother left me mattered more than money. One Tuesday morning, Dean asked me to deliver a sealed appraisal folder to an auction house on my way to work. Less than 20 minutes later, I was standing outside a private fitting room, watching his mistress wear my mother's sapphire brooch while my mother-in-law adjusted her dress. Then I heard my husband's voice through a speakerphone. "Keep Maggie away from the cedar cabinet until Friday. Once Helen's collection sells, we'll have enough to open the gallery. Then I'll file for divorce." I did not walk into the room. I quietly opened the audio note application I used for museum condition surveys and pressed record. If you have ever believed the person sleeping beside you was protecting the most vulnerable parts of your life, you need to hear this. Tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe to see how one strand of blue silk exposed my husband's affair, his family's betrayal, and the plan to sell everything my mother left me so Dean could build a new life with another woman. For the past 11 years, I have served as Director of Conservation at the Hawthorne Museum of Decorative Arts in Boston. My reputation was built on noticing details other people overlook. Dean, 47, runs a boutique estate advisory business. At dinner parties, he liked to say he understood value, while I worried about scratches no normal person could see. Beverly laughed every time, and Tessa once told a Thanksgiving table that Dean understood money and I understood dust. I laughed because I thought they were teasing me. That Tuesday morning, I was late for a donor review when Dean stopped me in our kitchen and slid a cream-colored portfolio across the marble island. Winthrop House Auctions was stamped across the front. "Maggie, I need a huge favor." He said the packet had to arrive before 10 and Winthrop House was only a few blocks from my museum. "Please, you're saving my life." Then he kissed my forehead. I took the folder without asking a question. 14 years of marriage can make dangerous things feel completely ordinary. At Winthrop House, I told the receptionist I was delivering a portfolio for Dean Hale. Oh, thank God. Miss Cross is already in the East fitting room. Before I could explain that I was Dean's wife, she handed me a visitor badge and said his mother and sister were already helping Vivian get ready. I walked down the corridor because I still believed there had to be an innocent explanation. The second door was slightly open. "Turn around, sweetheart," Beverly said. "Let me fix the back." Through the narrow opening, I saw Vivian standing before a large mirror in a black evening dress. Tessa was taking photographs while Beverly adjusted Vivian's neckline with the gentle concentration of a mother preparing her own daughter for an important night. Then Vivian turned toward the light. My mother's sapphire brooch was pinned above her heart. Helen bought that brooch after the first successful year of her alterations shop. When the clasp broke, I was 19 and still learning conservation. I reinforced one tiny section with blue silk. My mother laughed at my apology and said a repair did not become worthless just because someone could see the damage. She wore it to my graduation, my wedding, and her final birthday. 3 months earlier, Dean told me the brooch and several other family pieces had been sent to Zurich for an insurance appraisal. I believed him. He had held my hand when my mother died and helped me carry Helen's cedar boxes into our townhouse. Vivian touched the brooch. Her phone was lying on the dressing table with the speaker turned on. Dean's voice filled the room. "Make sure Maggie doesn't open the cedar cabinet before Friday." Tessa laughed and said I never checked it. "She spends 12 hours a day staring at cracks in dead people's furniture," Dean replied. "She won't notice a few empty boxes." Beverly smiled at Vivian's reflection. "I told you, Maggie has always confused trust with intelligence." Vivian asked whether Dean was sure she could wear the brooch that night. "Wear it. Maggie hasn't touched it in months." Then she asked what would happen after the auction. "Once the collection clears, we put the money into Cross and Hale Gallery. The lease is already waiting. I file for divorce after the transfer, and Maggie can keep staring at museum cabinets for the rest of her life." Cross and Hale combined Vivian's last name with my husband's as if they had already begun building a public life together while Dean was still sleeping beside me every night. Beverly let out a satisfied sigh. Finally, her reaction told me everything. She was not shocked that Dean planned to leave me. She had been waiting for it. Tessa adjusted the brooch and smiled. "You look better in it anyway." My hands became cold. Beverly had sat beside me at Helen's funeral. Tessa had carried my mother's cedar boxes upstairs. Dean had held me while I cried after the hospital called. They knew exactly what those objects meant to me. They had not stolen blindly. They had studied my grief first. I looked at my phone. The red timer was still moving. The first rule I teach young conservators is simple. When you discover damage, do not touch anything until you understand what happened, because emotional decisions can destroy the evidence that tells you how the damage occurred. So I stepped backward, without making a sound. I returned to the lobby and placed Dean's portfolio on the reception desk. The receptionist asked whether Vivian had received the documents. I smiled. She has everything she needs. Then I walked out carrying a recording of my husband planning to sell my dead mother's belongings, finance a gallery with his mistress, and divorce me the moment the sale was complete. Dean believed my obsession with details made me boring. His family believed my trust made me stupid. They had spent years laughing at the one thing about me they should have feared. I had built my entire career on understanding how damage leaves a record, and my husband had just given me 3 uninterrupted minutes of his. I did not go back to the museum that morning. I sat in my car 3 blocks from Winthrop House and listened to the recording once from beginning to end. Hearing Dean's voice without the shock of seeing Vivian in my mother's brooch made the plan sound even more calculated. He knew the collection was being sold. Beverly and Tessa knew. Vivian knew exactly where the money was going, and all 4 of them believed the only thing standing between their new gallery and a successful sale was keeping me away from one cedar cabinet until Friday. I saved the recording to my secure museum account and sent a second copy to an encrypted archive I used for sensitive conservation documentation. Then I drove home. The cedar cabinet stood in the corner of our bedroom exactly where Dean and I had placed it after my mother's estate was settled 4 years earlier. At first glance, nothing looked disturbed. The same archival boxes occupied the shelves in the same careful arrangement I remembered. I opened the first box. Empty. The second was empty too. By the time I reached the bottom drawer, 9 of the 12 objects my mother specifically left me were gone. Dean had taken the sapphire brooch, my grandfather's silver cigarette case, Helen's enamel trinket box, a Georgian mourning ring, 2 silver vinaigrettes, a porcelain miniature, a tortoiseshell hair comb, and the gold sewing chatelaine that had hung beside the cash register in my mother's alterations shop for almost 20 years. He left behind 3 pieces. I stared at them for several minutes before I understood why. They were the least valuable objects in the cabinet. That detail changed the shape of the betrayal again. Dean had not taken sentimental objects at random because he wanted quick cash. Someone had reviewed the collection, selected the strongest pieces, and left the lowest value items behind, so the cabinet would still appear occupied. He had not simply stolen from me. He had curated the theft. I carried the 3 remaining boxes to my home office and opened my laptop. Dean and I never shared work passwords, and I had no intention of breaking into his accounts. I did not need to. Estate advisors and gallery consultants build careers in public. Their businesses survive on photographs, event announcements, interviews, donor dinners, and the desperate need to be seen beside the right people. I searched Vivian Cross. Her professional website appeared first. She described herself as a private collection strategist and gallery consultant specializing in connecting heritage objects with modern collectors. The wording was polished enough to sound important, without explaining exactly what she did. Near the bottom of the page was an announcement for a new Boston gallery scheduled to open later that year. Cross and Hale. I clicked on the project page. There was no public address, but photographs showed an unfinished commercial space with tall windows, exposed brick, and fresh architectural drawings spread across a table. In one photograph, Vivian stood beside Dean. The caption thanked our founding advisor, Dean Hale, for helping transform a private vision into a permanent home for important objects. A private vision, a permanent home. They had been discussing my mother's collection as if it were the first inventory for their future business. I continued scrolling through Vivian's event photographs. 6 months earlier, Dean attended a private collector dinner with her. Beverly was there. Tessa was there. The caption thanked the Hale family for supporting Vivian's next chapter. 6 months earlier, Dean was still sleeping beside me every night. Beverly called me every Sunday. Tessa had asked whether I could recommend a conservator for one of her friends. They were already helping Vivian build her next chapter, while I had no idea they were preparing to end mine. There were more photographs, a winter charity dinner, a private home collection tour, a small gallery reception, Dean and Vivian were careful. They never kissed for a camera, and they never stood together in a way that would look inappropriate to a stranger. But I was not a stranger. I knew the exact way Dean placed his hand on a woman's lower back when he wanted to guide her through a room. He had touched me that way for 14 years. In one photograph, Beverly was fastening a pearl bracelet around Vivian's wrist. In another, Tessa had commented beneath Vivian's picture, "Finally found the right woman for this family." The comment was 8 months old. I checked the date twice because I remembered that month clearly. Dean and I had celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary at a restaurant in the North End. He gave me a silver picture frame and told me he was grateful I had always believed in him. 3 weeks earlier, his sister had publicly joked that another woman was the right one for their family. I thought about every family dinner I had attended since then. The private jokes, the messages Dean answered beneath the table, the way Beverly suddenly started asking whether I had completed a new insurance inventory after Helen died. Tessa once asked whether museums placed permanent identification marks on personal objects. I had spent 10 minutes explaining that conservation documentation depended on photographs, measurements, condition histories, and unique physical characteristics. At the time, I was pleased she seemed interested in my work. Now I understood they had been asking practical questions. The realization made me feel almost physically ill. They had used ordinary family conversations to learn how closely my mother's belongings were documented. I searched Cross and Hale again and found a short interview Vivian had given to a regional luxury magazine. She stood inside the unfinished gallery space and spoke about her philosophy of separating true market value from emotional attachment. Then she used a phrase that stopped me. "Real value begins when you're willing to release the past." Dean had said those exact words to me 3 months earlier. We had been standing beside the cedar cabinet when he suggested sending several pieces for insurance appraisal. He told me Helen would not want me imprisoned by sentiment. He said maybe it was time to release the past. I had believed my husband was encouraging me to heal. He had been preparing me not to notice when the cabinet became empty. That was when the affair stopped being the worst part of the story. People survive infidelity. They cry, they separate, they hire attorneys, and eventually they learn that sleeping alone is less painful than sleeping beside someone who lies. Dean had done something more personal. He listened when I talked about my mother. He learned which memories hurt enough to make me avoid the cabinet. He knew I had not opened some of those boxes in months. Then he built his timeline around my grief. My phone rang shortly after 4. Beverly. I stared at her name before answering. She sounded completely normal. She asked whether I was still coming to Sunday dinner, complained about traffic, and spent nearly a minute discussing a neighbor's kitchen renovation. Eventually, she asked whether Dean had mentioned the Winthrop House collector preview. I told her he had been busy. "Well, Dean is trying very hard to build something for his future," she said. "I hope you're supporting him." I asked what she meant. Beverly laughed softly. "Nothing, Maggie. You always analyze every word." The same joke again. I noticed too much when my attention made them uncomfortable, yet somehow they had convinced themselves I would notice nothing when they needed me blind. Before hanging up, Beverly added, "And please don't get sentimental about those old things again. Not everything old has to become a shrine." 9 objects were missing from my mother's cabinet, and the woman helping sell them had just worn Helen's brooch in front of Beverly. I thanked my mother-in-law for calling. Then I opened the secure conservation archive connected to Hawthorne Museum. For more than 20 years, I had photographed every major repair I performed and maintained detailed condition records for objects used in teaching, research, or private study. Several pieces from Helen's collection had been photographed during my early conservation training. Later, I used them in internal workshops because household objects often contain repairs that tell more honest histories than museum pieces. I typed Helen Marlowe into the archive search field. 47 records appeared. The first file contained 6 high-resolution photographs of the sapphire brooch. The blue silk reinforcement was clearly visible beneath magnification, along with a shallow crescent-shaped tool mark near the clasp and 2 tiny surface pits beside the lower pearl. The second file contained the tortoiseshell comb. The third showed my mother's enamel box before and after stabilization. I opened the Winthrop House preview page beside my records. The brooch matched. The comb matched. The enamel box matched. Then I started reading the auction descriptions. Lot 22 mentioned, localized enamel loss along the interior rim with evidence of a 19th century adhesive intervention. I stared at the sentence. I had written almost the exact same wording in a condition report 12 years earlier. Dean had not only taken my mother's objects, someone had used my conservation notes to create professional descriptions for the sale. My work, the same work Dean mocked at dinner parties, was helping his mistress present the collection as credible. At 6:30, I heard Dean come home. I closed the archive and went downstairs. He looked happier than usual. He poured himself a drink, kissed my cheek, and casually mentioned the Winthrop House collector preview on Friday night. "Vivian Cross is launching a new gallery concept," he said. "A lot of serious buyers will be there." I asked why he was telling me. Dean smiled. "Because you're coming with me." He explained that several collectors knew my position at Hawthorne Museum. My presence would make the evening feel more credible, especially around older decorative objects. Then he laughed and touched my arm. "Don't worry, nobody expects you to sell anything. Just talk about conservation and make people comfortable." I looked at my husband and finally understood how completely he had underestimated me. Dean was selling my mother's collection. He was using my private conservation notes to support the auction descriptions. Now, he wanted to use my professional title to reassure the people preparing to buy the stolen objects. He was not merely inviting me to the auction. My husband was asking me to help authenticate my own betrayal. Friday night, Dean took me to Winthrop House as if nothing had happened. During the drive, he talked about serious buyers and gallery backers, then reminded me to be pleasant because my position at Hawthorne Museum made collectors comfortable. My husband was taking me to an auction of my own mother's belongings because he believed my professional reputation could help him sell them. Nearly 70 guests filled the main preview room. Helen's objects sat beneath warm lights in glass cases, each accompanied by polished descriptions built partly from conservation notes I had written years earlier. The gold sewing chatelaine hurt most. My mother had worn it beside the register in her alterations shop for almost 20 years. Winthrop House now described it as a refined European domestic accessory from a private continental collection. Dean placed a hand on my back. "Smile. People are watching." Then Vivian entered wearing a dark green dress with my mother's sapphire brooch pinned above her heart. Beverly crossed the room to greet her, and Tessa followed with champagne. They looked so natural together that I understood I was not discovering a new relationship. I was seeing a family arrangement they had already practiced without me. Dean soon took a microphone and introduced Vivian as the future director of Cross and Hale Gallery. He praised her ability to recognize value where sentimental owners saw only clutter. Then he gestured toward me. "My wife Maggie works in conservation. She's very good at remembering damage. Vivian understands value." Several guests laughed. For years, I had let that joke pass because correcting my husband in public seemed petty. That night, he was standing beside his mistress, selling my mother's property and using my museum title to reassure the people preparing to buy it. A collector asked whether Hawthorne Museum had reviewed any of the pieces. Dean answered before I could speak. "Maggie has seen enough old jewelry to know this collection is exceptional. Right, honey?" I looked toward the entrance. Dr. Nora Bell, Winthrop House's head of provenance review, had just entered carrying a gray archival case. 2 days earlier, I had placed Helen's estate inventory, my 47 conservation records, and the fitting room recording on Nora's desk. I did not ask her to believe my marriage story. I asked her to compare the documented physical history of 9 objects with the collection Winthrop House had accepted for sale. Nora stopped beside the central display. "This sale is suspended." The room went silent. Dean's smile vanished. Nora removed a magnified photograph of the sapphire brooch. The blue silk beneath the clasp was clearly visible beside a shallow tool mark and 2 tiny surface pits near the lower pearl. She placed it beside an image produced during the auction house's examination that morning. The marks matched. "I put that silk there when I was 19, I said. "My mother wore this brooch for the next 25 years. Dean stepped forward and raised his voice. "This is ridiculous. Maggie is emotional because these things remind her of her mother." He had prepared that explanation long before I arrived. I was sentimental. I was obsessed with damage. I could not understand real value. Nora placed Helen's estate inventory beside dated photographs of the brooch, the tortoiseshell comb, the enamel box, and 6 other objects. "The issue is not Mrs. Hale's emotions," she said. 9 objects consigned as property of a private continental estate match, documented objects specifically transferred to Margaret Hale from the estate of Helen Marlowe. Whispers spread through the room. Then, the display monitor showed one of my old condition reports beside the auction description for Helen's enamel box. The wording was nearly identical. Nora explained that Winthrop House had identified descriptions drawn from conservation records authored by me years before the consignment. Dean finally looked frightened. Beverly suddenly shouted, "For God's sake, he only borrowed a few old things she never used." Every face turned toward her. Tessa grabbed her mother's arm, but panic had already taken over. "She was supposed to give the brooch back after the launch," Tessa yelled, pointing at Vivian. Vivian went pale. I watched Dean's family turn one accusation into 3 admissions without anyone asking another question. Dean pushed through the guests and stopped in front of me. "You wouldn't know any of this if that receptionist hadn't sent you down the wrong hallway," he shouted. "You'd still be sitting in that museum pretending scratches matter more than real life." I held his gaze. "So you were counting on me not noticing?" "I was counting on you being at work, Maggie. Like always." The room became completely still. Dean had just explained his own plan in front of collectors, auction executives, gallery backers, his mistress, his mother, and his sister. I did not need to shout back. "That's the difference between us, Dean. You saw objects. I kept records." Winthrop House secured the collection and asked Dean and Vivian to leave the presentation area. 2 gallery backers stepped away from them before they reached the door. One founding investor quietly told Nora he wanted his name removed from anything connected to Cross and Hale. Vivian turned on Dean. "You told me she agreed to sell." For the first time in 14 years, I watched my husband search for a lie and fail to find one quickly enough. 8 months later, Cross and Hale Gallery had no investors and never opened. Winthrop House ended its business relationship with Dean, and the 9 objects were returned to me after the ownership records were reviewed. Beverly mailed me a 6-page letter beginning with, "We all made mistakes." I never answered. Dean asked to meet during the divorce process. I declined. That same year, Hawthorne Museum opened a public conservation studio I had proposed long before my marriage fell apart. Near the entrance, we created a small display about visible repairs. My mother's sapphire brooch sits inside that case. The label does not mention market value. It says the clasp was reinforced with blue silk by Margaret Marlowe Hale at age 19. One afternoon, a young trainee asked why I had never replaced the thread with a cleaner, invisible repair. Because not every scar needs help pretending it never happened. My phone vibrated. Dean had left another voicemail. I deleted it without listening and returned to the lab. For 30 years, I had made a life out of repairing what other people damaged. Dean was the first thing I chose not to restore. Would you have tried to save the marriage? Or was I right to finally stop repairing what Dean kept breaking? Tell me what you think in the comments, and do not forget to like and subscribe.